If you're listening to this episode on the day of its release, Disneyland's 70th anniversary celebration officially kicks off today. With it comes the return of the nighttime spectacular Wondrous Journeys, originally created for the Disney 100 celebration in 2023, honoring the 100th anniversary of the Walt Disney Company. This nighttime spectacular features moments from every animated feature released by the Walt Disney Animation Studios at that time. Joining me to discuss the creation of this truly spectacular show is the Associate Creative Director, Brian Larsh. Brian worked his way through the ranks of Disney nighttime spectaculars, having worked on projects all around the globe. In this conversation, we discuss the original brainstorming sessions for Wondrous Journeys, the process of bringing it into the parks, how much the specific audience is taken into consideration, plus the craft of projection mapping as a whole, and so much more. Enjoy my conversation with Brian.
It's time to dive into today's Disney Dialogue.
Hello, Brian, and welcome to Dizney Coast to Coast. How you doing today?
I'm good. How are you, Jeff?
I'm excited because I get to talk to you about a nighttime spectacular. First of all, I'm a big nighttime spectacular guy. It's like one of my favorite things about theme parks in general. But I really love Wondrous Journeys. When it first premiered and I saw it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is up there with some of the best. So I'm very excited to talk to you about it. You worked on it as the Associate Creative Director, but it certainly wasn't your first thing with the Walt Disney Company. So I'd love to just kind of go back a bit, and if you could just give us the highlights, because you really climbed the ranks. You started as a stage technician, and now you're a creative director for Nighttime Spectaculars. So can you kind of fill in the middle of that a little bit for us?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, I started at Disneyland in Anaheim. I grew up in Orange County, so it was just natural for me to come into there. From being a stage technician, I would say my big transition was getting to run the fireworks shows, right? I started with Remember Dreams Come True with, what an amazing first show, right? To come into. And from there, the opportunity came up to create a new fireworks show, Magical. And I was positioned really well to become the lighting programmer on that show, which was the first time I got to work on a nighttime spectacular. And from there, everything just kind of took off. Working with that team specifically, just all of the masterminds behind the nighttime spectaculars, specifically Steve Davison. I really got to work with him and how he works. And then from there, we went to World of Color. He took me straight to World of Color, which what an incredible project that was. And that was kind of the launching point, I would say, for me to get into these big nighttime spectaculars. Because from there, the team was like, hey, okay, we're going to Paris next, and we're going to do a video mapping show. Do you want to come? Right. And so from there, of course, I'm going to come to Paris and create a new show. So from there, it just kind of took off from Paris, going to Tokyo, Hong Kong, and then we opened Shanghai now about 10 years ago, over 10 years ago. And so that's kind of, I'd say, how that big turn happened from stage technician to now where I'm at, creating nighttime spectaculars.
Fantastic. And as I mentioned, you're the Associate Creative Director of Wondrous Journeys, which debuted in January of 2023 as part of the Disney 100 celebration. That, of course, was celebrating the 100th anniversary of the Walt Disney Company. And as I mentioned, I absolutely loved the show. The first time I saw it, I was just blown away by it. And now it's back in the park, celebrating the 70th anniversary of Walt Disney's original theme park, Disneyland. So let's just start kind of at the beginning with the basics. What is the story of Wondrous Journeys?
Wondrous Journeys is a celebration of every artist that has contributed to a Disney animated film. It's also a reminder of us how we all connect to the characters in our life. So I would say this would be the closest we've come to creating a documentary in a nighttime spectacular way, of course, celebrating animation studios, which is at the heart of the company.
Very nice. And what is the assignment when you get this? Like, are you involved in the concept? Of course, I guess the assignment is we're celebrating the 100th anniversary of the company, but are you told, hey, we're going to do that by focusing on Walt Disney Animation Studios, or are you part of the conversation of figuring all of that out?
Yeah, I'm in the conversations from day one. Our ask was this show was at the same time of the celebration of Disney 100, so that was really our inspiration for the show, right? And then we started asking ourselves, well, how do we create a show that celebrates 100 years of magic and animation in 13 minutes? Truly, that was the biggest challenge I would say we have. And from there, we just decided to go back to what is the most important thing, which is story, and what's at the heart of story, and it's our animation, right? So that's kind of like those were our original conversations of how do we take everything the Walt Disney Company has done and condense it into 13 minutes.
Yeah, I thought it was really smart when it was decided the focus is because let's face it, the Walt Disney Company is everywhere. There are theme parks, there are cruises, like it's a ton of different things. But the thing that started it all really is animation. So I thought it was very, very smart to go with we're going to focus on the animation aspect of the company. That's been there since day one. So that really does encompass the 100 years that we're celebrating. I loved it. I'm just kind of curious, did it ever have a different name, or was Wondrous Journeys kind of the one that stuck from the beginning?
The word wonder had always been in the conversations before we came up with the title. And the way this worked was we didn't try to figure out what the title is and then figure out what the show is. We just started having conversations with each other and also reaching out to our partners at Animation Studios, and just started to inspire ourselves of what this story is. And wonder, the word wonder really stuck with us. And so then once we kind of laid out the whole show of what we wanted to accomplish, we took the word wonder and figure out how to make that into a title that is worth celebrating.
Very cool. I want to step back for a second and talk about kind of as a whole, not just Wondrous Journeys, but let's talk about projection mapping, because I do think, and I mean, let's talk about it in layman's terms, because I think a lot of people just feel like you set up a projector, you project some film onto something, and that's it. But can we dive a little bit more into it and really kind of the difficulties with it?
Absolutely. So the best way I can describe it is if you're in a conference room, you have a projector set up. It's being projected onto a flat surface, right? That's how we see the images, right? But when you have a complicated surface, such as, I don't know, a Disney castle, and if you were to put a projector onto it, everything would be stretched and wouldn't register the way we would want it to. So what video mapping does is compensates for all of the architecture and incorporates that into unstretch it to make it look like it is perfectly wrapped around the building.
Okay, so is that something that really technology handles, or is that kind of manipulated by a human?
Well, it's both, right? We can't just set up a projector and let it do all the work. So we have a very talented team, truly the best in the industry, that we bring in to make all of this work look effortless to the guests. So there's a lot of technology. A lot of the technology is like I said, hidden from the guest's eye to make it just look seamless.
And does it originally start with like a scan of the building, like a computer scan, or how does the projector get that information of distance and crevices and such?
We do scan each surface, right? Because we do need to know the angle and the distance, and the depth between different surfaces. We compensate for literally every square inch of the surface we're going to project onto. And then from there, we create a 3D model. And that's what our artists work with, right? So even before we get on site to program the show to put it together, our artists are working, for weeks with this 3D model. So that way, when we get there, that it's all going to line up.
And is that mostly just done like looking at a computer screen, or are they wearing VR goggles, or how does that work?
We have used VR goggles in the past for certain projects, but for a show like this, it's very traditional with computer monitors and our artists all set up in the same room working on various scenes.
Just to give people kind of an idea, approximately how many projectors, if you're looking just at Sleeping Beauty Castle, approximately how many projectors are being used for a nighttime spectacular?
With Anaheim, it is our smallest castle, but obviously our most cherished. This one is a smaller footprint. So we have two main projection towers, one on the left and the right, and then one that fills in the center from behind the castle. So there's three different locations that cover the whole surface of the castle.
What do you mean from behind the castle? Like, how does it hit the front of the castle if it's behind it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the archway in the center of the castle, we put up a screen there, and that's one of our main projection surfaces. And because we love to hide our technology, we can't obviously set a projector up in front, of the castle that would hit at that angle. So there's a projector behind the castle that gets set up every night for the show that rear projects onto that screen that is inside the archway.
Very cool. I love that. One thing I really find fascinating with all of these nighttime spectaculars is we are looking at what seems to be animation from our favorite animated films and such. But like the reality is, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm going to assume that a large chunk of this stuff needs to be reanimated. It's not just like editing a clip out of a film and projecting that on a castle. Am I correct? You have to like reanimate this stuff, right?
There is a level of reanimation in a lot of our shows, but a lot of the clips, especially of our characters, are the actual clips from the movies. We go through a process called rotoscoping, which is, removing the backgrounds from our characters. That way we can repurpose our characters onto a different background that would fit the theme of our show.
Interesting. One of the things I really find fascinating with, I keep saying projection mapping, and you keep saying, what do you say, video mapping? What's the proper term? Or is there one, or is it interchangeable? Is there a difference between the two?
It's interchangeable. Yeah, I would say projection mapping is the more technical term, but we interchange video with projection quite a bit.
Okay. One of the things I find really interesting is when, we see the characters, and I think that's what we think of when we think of a projection mapping show, but I always find it really fascinating when the projection is being used as lighting. So it lights the castle in a way where it looks like a lighting instrument is hitting a wall and creating that effect. But in reality, it's just the projector. And I don't know, that just feels like a whole different design skill. Is it the same people who are putting in the animation, or is that a different team?
Our team is compiled of multiple different artists that have specialties of, what you're talking about is, like light animation that makes it look like there is a physical light hitting the building, right? We have animators that specialize in that. We have animators that specialize in backgrounds and foregrounds and pixie dust, and so it just depends of what the ask is, and we compile that team to make sure we have the right people in place.
Yeah, I just always love when there's something that I don't think the general public thinks about. It just feels like it exists. It's there. It's a lighting instrument or whatever. I'm like, no, it's actually a projection, and that's so cool to me. I nerd out over that stuff. But with Wondrous Journeys, of course, as we said, it's all about animation. It begins with line drawings, which I really love. We get some line drawings of Mickey Mouse, and it transitions into some Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which, of course, is very fitting because it is, of course, Walt Disney's first animated feature. And music has always been a huge part of Disney Nighttime Spectaculars, so much so that I feel like, I feel like a Nighttime Spectacular hits when the original theme song written for it just stays in your head. And that is the case for It's Wondrous, music and lyrics by Duddy Brown and Grammy Award-winning, correct me if I'm saying this wrong, Alex Garangus. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
So yeah, very memorable tune. I really, really, really love it. Any stories behind the music or how that inspired the work done on the show?
Yeah, absolutely. First and foremost, I would say this original song is one of my favorites out of all the Disney shows I've done. There's just something so endearing about this song, and I'm already like choking up. Excuse me. I don't even know why. But I'll tell you, I think the lyrics is they're so poetic and open ended. I think a lot of the times we'll come up with lyrics that are very specific to an emotion, but this is so open ended for our guests to interpret in their own way.
So yeah, how did the music begin? Like at what point of the process is it decided, hey, these are the musicians we're going to go with. This is what we want from the song. Is it really the musicians who are very much throwing you ideas, or is the Disney team being like, this is what we want, this is the feel we want, go create that?
I would say it's a little bit of both, Jeff. We know the theme and the message of what we want to communicate, but then we bring in our musicians and our songwriters to help us with that. And we had a couple different songs to choose from, actually. And when these songs came back to us after we told them, hey, these are the broad messages of what we're trying to communicate, they came back to us to try to incorporate some of those themes into the lyrics of the song. And so what we did was we had our list. I forget how many songs. Let's just say it was 5. We had our different songs. We all went away for about 3 days to listen to all those and try not to talk to each other. We just want to understand like what resonates with you. And then we all came back. We had a meeting of, okay, what's your top, right? And no joke, Jeff, we all chose this song. We were so excited to share that because with each other, because there was just the messaging was so pure and innocent, but connected so well to our show that we knew we had a winner with this song.
That's amazing. That's, it's always nice when it works out where everybody just has the same first choice and there's no discussion about it. It's just like, this is the one. And yeah, I'd say solid choice. Obviously, I haven't heard the other tunes, but I love It's Wondrous. I think it's really, really great. But of course, when you're creating a nighttime spectacular, you're going to be using a lot of classic Disney music. And I love the art of a mashup. And I've got to tell you, Wondrous Journeys has one of my favorite mashups ever, where we have Go the Distance from Hercules, the Belle Reprise from Beauty and the Beast, How Far I'll Go from Moana, and Out There from Hunchback of Notre Dame. And these 4 songs, I don't know how y'all did it, but they fit so beautifully together. It is wild, and it just makes my jaw drop every time I hear it and see it. I'm like, oh my God, so this was a stroke of genius right here.
That is definitely one of our favorite moments in the show, one of our favorite songs. And do you actually know where that originated from?
I have no idea. Please tell me.
So it actually, the inspiration of that song came from Animazement over at Fantasyland Theater. So it's kind of a tip to our past, right, within the park from that show, which we all loved, and so we extracted that, and then created it into our story, and it, I think, worked out so beautiful. It was just it's very emotional, and especially tied in with the fireworks. It turned out way better than any of us had imagined.
Just to nerd out for a little second, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe Eden Espinosa was a cast member in Animazement who you would later use for Magical, correct? She was the singer of Magical's theme song?
Yeah, that's correct. That's a good catch there, Jeff. Yeah.
That's a nerd alert right there. I'm a theater person, so of course, big Eden fan. But yeah, it's an incredible mashup, and not going to point any out, but I've heard some that just don't work. Like there have been cases, not just Disney, just in general, like some mashups just don't work. And so when it does hit, it might sound, yeah, of course, this is simple. You just take 4 existing songs and you lay them over each other. It's a breeze, but it's really not. Like, it's an art form, and It's so beautifully done in this. One of the things that I find really fascinating, though, is when you have a piece of music from an existing animated film, yet you're like working in other animation from other films that aren't associated with this song typically. Can you talk a little bit about that and kind of, I don't know, the care that needs to go into that, and or how you decide what clips would work from films not typically associated?
Yeah, well, we definitely have great, partners that we collaborate with, and we do some real deep dives of what's the emotion of the song, and maybe who our lead character is for the inspiration, but who else can fit into that scene and that emotion. And so we start just listing out all of our characters who we feel is whether they're going through a trial or that are just purely having fun, whatever that emotion is, we just list them out of, okay, here's our list of characters, and we just start massaging it and just throwing them into the song to see how it feels. And we quickly realize, what works and what doesn't. And when it works, it works. And that's what we strive for, is just having that emotional connection. And we take a lot of time and due diligence in making sure that every character we put into that specific moment in the show is for a reason.
So obviously one of the big things with Wondrous Journeys was, a task was, and I'm actually kind of curious if you put this on yourselves or if this was kind of a Disney mandate sort of thing, but all 61 animated features up to that point in Disney history are represented in some way, shape, or form in Wondrous Journeys. What was that process like? Like, did you, obviously, we all know Disney films as fans and stuff, but was it like, okay, I really got to go back and watch these 61 movies to really do the proper research?
Yeah, it was a big task to put onto ourselves, right? We obviously all have our favorite films, but to try to put every animated film into, again, a 13-minute show, it was very challenging. I will say this: we leaned heavily into our animation partners more so than any other show we do, because this was their story to tell. We were meeting with them constantly and set up. We actually set up a 2-hour meeting with them, with Animation Studios and all of a lot of the artists. And the premise of this call was not to have goals at the end of, this is who or where each character needs to go in the show. It was just, what's your favorite film? Who's your favorite character? What are the moments that if I say, what's your favorite romantic scene? Go. And then we would all share, like, well, I think this is my favorite, and why. And we categorized that and took all of that in, because like these are the people that are creating our characters, and so why not go to them, right? So this process was a little different, like I said, in the sense that we had so much support from our animation friends, that they truly helped transform this into a way that I don't think we could have without them.
I am curious, of course, what some of your favorite little moments are, or if there are any kind of deep cuts that you were just excited to fit in there, like, a Black Cauldron or Atlantis or something like that.
We all got excited when we had the task of Black Cauldron, right? Just because that is definitely a underrated deep cut movie. So I think that was amazing to put that in there. However, I think my favorite scene is actually Sleeping Beauty, right? Right after the opening of the show, we start with Sleeping Beauty and the forest projected onto Main Street. I love the art style of Ivan Earl and just how simple that art form is. And I think, again, tied in with the beautiful slow falling fireworks coming behind the castle, just that backdrop really was just one of my favorite moments of just kind of being quiet and still and just being surrounded by beautiful artwork and in that form. I think another almost there with using Princess and the Frog. We had some incredible singers in that show. that just sang with so much heart and soul that really elevated the energy and excitement of Wondrous Journeys. So I think it was fun to celebrate that moment with all of our happy and joyful Disney characters.
I am kind of curious. This, of course, features the animated features, 61 animated features. At the beginning, we see a little bit of Mickey Mouse and his friends and some of the old Walt Disney shorts form. But right in the middle of the show, we get a bit of The Old Mill, which is a 1937 animated short. And I've seen this clip used before in other nighttime spectaculars. I'm specifically thinking of World of Color. And I'm curious, if you're doing a show featuring animated features, how did The Old Mill end up in this mix?
Well, just because it's a short, it's still part of animation studios, and we still want to showcase those shorts. Like you mentioned, we had shorts at the very top of the show of Mickey and his friends, and we felt like that was a perfect place to add that in because of just the end of Immortals, kind of the destruction, feeling defeated, but the visual statement of the mill, of just the rain and thunder, connected pretty well with that scene. And of course, we loved to put in some deep cuts or some things. We love to surprise our guests, right? So we felt like that was a perfect place and reason to put it in.
You mentioned Immortals, the Fall Out Boy song featured in Big Hero 6. And I gotta say, every time I see the show, I feel like the response from the crowd is just huge at this moment. And I do feel like it's a great song, don't get me wrong, but I do feel like, when it comes to Disney Nighttime Spectaculars, there are songs that are used over and over and over again. And so when we get one that is not typical, there seems to be a big reaction, and Immortals seems to be that when it comes to Wondrous Journeys. I'm curious, how did that work in there? Was that like somebody on the team's favorite tune, or why was that one chosen?
Well, we know we wanted to showcase Baymax in a big way. And so it started with, let's fly Baymax over the castle. How cool would that be? Right. And so it naturally backed into, let's do Immortals, because that would be a high energy song, seeing Baymax fly over the castle. So it kind of just fell into place after we decided to fly Baymax.
I feel like that's a big thing with the nighttime spectaculars now. Of course, for many years, we've had Tinkerbell flying over the castle. We love that. I remember with Magical. What was Magical? Magical was Dumbo and the Up House? And was that also Nemo?
It was.
I'm getting them
Dumbo
all confused now, aren't I?
Yeah, you are. And I do too all the time. It is hard. Magical was Dumbo and then Nemo.
And then at some point, I can't even remember which show. Oh, I think it was the Pixar show. The Up House came in. So it is one of those things where like flying different characters over the castle is always fun. Baymax was, a very nice surprise and part of Wondrous Journeys as well. So that's super cool. We've been talking a lot about music, and music is a huge, huge, huge part of Disney films and nighttime spectaculars. But one thing, once again, I don't think people think about so much, but I think makes a huge, huge impression, is simply quotes from these movies. We always hear little pieces of dialogue and quotes from these films, and there's clearly a lot of text out there and dialogue out there in these animated films. How does that process begin of, these are the quotes we need to use? Because it's not like, to all who come to this happy place, welcome. Like, they're the givens, right? But with Wondrous Journeys, there are some of those quotes that you don't necessarily think of top of mind, but fit so beautifully in this. So I'm just kind of curious what that process is like.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say first and foremost, the question we have to ask ourselves is, who is our audience, right? And our Disneyland audience in Anaheim, they're very, very smart, right? I mean, they know their clips, they know their movies. So we felt like we really wanted to surprise them with some quotes that aren't, maybe at the top of the list, right? That are some deep dive cuts. We started the show off from a quote from Dinosaur, right? The old movie from I think 2000. But the simplicity of that quote, that some things start out big and some things start out small, but sometimes the smallest thing can make the biggest changes of all, right? I mean, that alone sets us up for success, and also just ties back to Walt Disney and him starting off with Mickey Mouse and how everything had grown from one spark of imagination and grown into something that is beyond anyone's dreams.
So that is like a really deep cut, right? Like Dinosaur, as you mentioned, is a film from 25 years ago at this point. It's one that, admittedly, I think a lot of Disney fans may not have seen. I personally enjoy it. But, it's not top of mind. So how did a quote from Dinosaur end up opening the show?
We were looking for ways to set the tone for the show. And our show director, Jordan, immediately came up to us and said, we need to start this with this quote. And the intro of the song was actually made to fit that quote in perfectly, just because the simplicity of that quote, we knew was going to be so powerful that we wanted to make sure it fit musically as well.
That's wild. And you know what I love about that is there are many people, and this has happened to me even with some songs from lesser known films and stuff, where you hear it in the park and it becomes kind of like part of your park lexicon more than the film. Even if you don't know where it originally came from, you know it's a Disney quote. And, some people probably hear it now and think Wondrous Journeys more than Dinosaur, which I think is cool. It brings like a whole new life to it. So that's cool. It's a great story.
Yeah, absolutely. And let me tell you, watching Wondrous Journeys on opening night on Main Street, when that quote happened, I heard someone say, "Oh my gosh, that's from Dinosaur," right? And that alone was just, we're done, right? Because our audience gets it. And I think that was just so incredible to hear that, of just that affirmation, because up until that point, it's just the team, right? And of course, we did our own research, but for someone in that moment to call out, "Oh my gosh, this is from Dinosaur," we knew the rest of the show was going to be a slam dunk, and we couldn't wait to experience it with them and just to hear all of their emotions.
I'm literally getting chills hearing you say that, because those are my favorite moments. I love the moments that 5% of an audience gets it, because it doesn't take anything away from the other 95%, right? It just makes a truly magical moment for the 5% who get it. And I love that so much. That's great. That's fantastic. You mentioned really thinking about the audience that you're creating these shows for, and it makes me wonder. I know that there have kind of been, shared elements of one nighttime spectacular from one resort to another, but has there ever been a nighttime spectacular you can think of that was being designed for more than one resort simultaneously? Or are the audiences so different that that's not even something that would be considered?
Every show we've created is for a specific park. We've taken, certain songs, of course, or scenes as a base, and I don't want to say copied from, but used again as a base and created our own version of it for our audience. But again, we are very mindful of our audience and how they would resonate with a certain scene or a certain song. And we do look to our partners like overseas. I know we're talking about Wondrous Journeys, but talking about, a market like our Japanese friends, we do have our local consultants at the park that help influence how we create these shows, because they know their audience as well. So we bring in the team that would know that audience no matter what park we're at to help shape up our show.
That's awesome. I love that. Now, in more recent years, we've seen something happen in the parks for a number of reasons, and that is that the nighttime spectaculars are kind of relying less on fireworks, so much so that there are nights where the show goes on without fireworks. And this is a number of reasons. Of course, there's that evil word budget. There's also environmental reasons. There's also the fact that Anaheim, Disneyland, is very close to residents, and if the winds are high, fireworks get canceled. But with something like Wondrous Journeys that has, I don't even want to say a B mode, because it's kind of worked into the equation at this point. There is a show without pyro. What's the conversation there when it comes to the creation of it? How are you considering, this is how the show will be with pyrotechnics, this is how it will be without? And I don't know, do you have to like amp it up because in advance there's going to be, I think a majority of the performances will be no pyro?
Yeah, it kind of all goes back to our toolkit. And what I mean by that is how we first look at all the different areas that we're running the show at, right? We have Rivers of America, we have Small World, the castle, and Main Street as well. So those are our canvases of how we tell our story. And because of technology, how it's increased with video mapping, we've been able to do shows without fireworks that weren't possible, 15 years ago. So we've really leaned into the technology to still communicate and share this experience with our guests, even if there's no fireworks. Of course, I love fireworks and I want them in every show that I do. But in situations like this, we know we need to rely on all of our other elements to the show. I would say the first and foremost is the music, right? The music, as we have already talked about, is the original song and the rest of the show, for that matter, is so beautiful that I can guarantee you when you're driving home from the park, you're humming that song or singing it, right? Or your kids are. So music is definitely important, but then also the other tools and how we communicate and share our story through our visual language.
Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, that was the nighttime spectacular for so many years. It was just pyrotechnics. And now with projection mapping and with drones, it's going a bit in the background, I would say. And I personally, I'm just grateful for Disneyland Park that we have the option of having a nighttime spectacular without it, just because, we are so close to residents that it's a problem. It's canceled more than I think anybody would want. So it's great that there is still a show regardless. Now, you touched upon this just a moment ago, but there are, I say, 4 different views of the show. I don't know if the folks working on it consider Sleeping Beauty Castle and Main Street the same thing. I don't. But there's the Sleeping Beauty Castle view. There's the Main Street USA view. There's the It's a Small World view. And there's the Rivers of America view. And I mean, how much of it is really creating 4 different shows, or is it much? Obviously, you're using the same elements, but you have to rework a ton, I would assume, from one to the next.
Yeah, Disneyland is very unique in that matter. It's the only park that when we run a firework nighttime spectacular, that we are doing it at multiple locations. Every other park just has it at the castle and down Main Street, right? So absolutely, we have to first and foremost create the show that is going to work and resonate on Main Street and at the castle. That's where we start. And then we take that show that we've created at the castle and on Main Street, and we apply that over at Rivers of America with that toolkit, right? Which is completely different. Obviously, we don't have a castle there. So how do you tell that story, right? And then the same thing with Small World. Obviously, there's more video projection on the facade of It's a Small World. So they're all 3 different shows. And I think that's the beauty of Wondrous Journeys over any nighttime spectacular, because you can feel something different at Rivers of America than you would on Main Street. And the same thing goes for Small Worlds. I encourage guests who didn't even know that we run the show over at Small World to go over there, especially on the busy nights, right? You just go to Small World and watch it there. It's a completely different show.
Yeah, do you happen to know, are all 61 animated films represented at all 4 locations?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. I think Small World would be close to a yes, just because of how much projection we have. The surface there, we're more limited over at Rivers of America with just our water screens and some of the projection on the mill. But we tried for sure to incorporate them all into those other locations.
Yeah, Rivers of America is especially interesting because, as you said, you have the building on the island, you have the mist screens, but then in addition to that, there's some fountain choreography that is also worked into it, which is an element that is in no other location. So that's like yet another thing to have to think about. It's kind of remarkable, honestly, when you think about how much is going into these nighttime spectaculars specifically for Disneyland. Like you said, it's unlike any other park in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned fountains, and of course we have World of Color over at California Adventure. And when we designed and built that show, we recognized that our characters are the fountains. And so that language we brought over to Phantasmic as well, that we tried to create emotion out of moving water fountains and how to connect back to the story, right? And we use fountains in other shows around the world, but there's always a purpose for what we do, not just with water fountains, but with lasers and with lighting as well. Everything has a true meaning, and we put a lot of work into making sure massaging the whole thing into the final end result.
Yeah, one thing I'd like to touch on that is in that same family. Sure, there's the fountains and the lasers and all that additional stuff, but some guests are getting an added bonus of a Magic Band Plus, where their wrists are lighting up and pulsing. And is that also part of your team designing those moments as well?
It is, yeah. We take the what we call our color story, right? Of all the different colors we use throughout the show, and figure out how to incorporate that into the bands as well.
So, I mean, there's so many different elements. It's kind of mind-boggling. What is like the length of the process? How many is it a year? Is it multiple years? Don't even tell me it's like 6 months, because you'll blow my mind if that's the case.
It's not 6 months. We strive for a year and a half would be our comfortable minimum. We've done shows in less time than that, but it's just not preferred. But each show is different and unique in its own way. And for the example of a park that is asking for a anniversary show, and they know that it's 2 years out, they will come to us and say, this is our anniversary show. This is our main message that we're going to celebrate. Can we build and design a fireworks show that would help support this? And so that time, yeah, we would have way more time. But I would say on average, it's probably about a year and a half to 2 years.
It's crazy. It's wild. Where are you watching on opening night? Are you on Main Street? Are you at the castle? Or what are those feelings going for any nighttime spectacular,
The heart of it all, I would say, is on Main Street, right? Just kind of by Penny Arcade is a good location, or Coke Corner, just because I love getting the peripheral of Main Street and then connected to the castle, and then the background of the fireworks, like that trifecta is something so beautiful, and I think that's where all of our pure, true Disney guests go to, all of our Disney fans. And we want to be with the fans, right? There can be an option that we go up on our rooftop and enjoy it there, but what's the fun in that? Like, the whole reason that we make these shows is for our guests. And that is truly the biggest payoff of these shows we work on, is opening night, standing shoulder to shoulder with guests and having conversations with the family leading up to the fireworks show. And they have no idea who we are or what our lives have been like for the last, year or two on this journey. And we're delivering this gift to them. And just to see the smiles on the parents' faces and the kids' faces in those moments, it's truly something that is indescribable, that I have so much emotion and gratitude for the work and position that I'm in. And it truly inspires me to continue doing more of these shows, because at the heart of it all, with all the meetings and the brainstorm sessions and the collaboration with our music partners and everyone else, it's the guest that matters, right? And so just bringing it all back to those 15 minutes standing next to those guests is that great reminder of why we do what we do.
And of course, before that moment arrives, I assume you're spending some nights in the park after the park's closed, testing all of this stuff, testing the projection work and the pyro and all that. And I'm curious, when you're in that phase of testing in the park, I guess how long are you in that testing phase in the actual park? Or at that point, is there the option to change anything as far as like the animation is concerned, or is that like locked at that point?
We're usually on site for about 6 weeks. And of course, we're working overnight and we work until the sun kicks us out, right? So our nights depend on when we can actually get going. However, there's still flexibility to change a lot when we get on site, right? There's, I would say, maybe the point of no return that it's hard to if we wanted to take something out and reanimate something or start from scratch, knowing the process and new animation takes a lot of time. We want to make sure the quality of what we put out is high. So everyone understands the process, and we know if we wanted to make a change, it better be for a good reason. But I would say we get pretty locked into the show about 3 or 4 weeks out. We're pretty locked into all of our characters and the placement of characters and backgrounds.
What's it like being in the park, in an empty park with just your colleagues, very small amount of people, like watching a nighttime spectacular created for thousands?
We don't run fireworks every night, unfortunately. So we kind of dissect the show into different parts of the team, meaning the lighting team is working on a certain scene, but then the media could be working on something completely different than the lighting team, right? So there's a lot of things happening at once, but we're not just watching the show every 15 minutes over and over. In that sense, it's a lot like, it can be like watching paint dry. It's not always exciting, just to be completely honest, but it's the work that I know that needs to get done in order for the show to be successful. So I do enjoy being there on those cold nights and trying to push ourselves in making sure that this show is going to be incredible. And I will say that is probably one of the biggest challenges. When it's cold, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, you're making a creative decision, but whatever decision that is going to affect thousands and thousands of our guests night after night when it is at the peak of their day, right? At 9:30 at night, and they want to see a Disney spectacular. It all kind of comes back to that moment and thinking of, I need to make sure I'm bringing my best, even though I'm cold, I'm tired, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. But that's the thing that keeps pushing us to move forward, to do our best in those quiet and cold hours of the night.
Yeah, it really is like the final moment for a lot of people, whether it's they're visiting the park for the day or it's the end of their vacation. This is really that kiss goodnight that Walt said, and it continues decades later. So it is an important element. I mean, I'm a live entertainment guy, so I'm going to love a nighttime spectacular regardless. But I do think even for people who, I would say the majority of people that go to a theme park, it's about rides. But I do think the nighttime spectacular is kind of that common point for the interjection of the people whose focus might be live entertainment plus the people whose focus might be the rides. I think the nighttime spectacular kind of meets in the middle there. So I think it is a really important part of the parks. So I appreciate the fact that there are people like you creating them and continuously creating them. The amount of them is just wild at this point, especially at Disneyland Resort, where it's a lot of locals coming over and over and over and over again. And the same show can't run for decades, Now, we talked about the different locations that you can watch Wondrous Journeys from. One I didn't mention, and I know you didn't work on this, but I'd be remiss not to mention something really spectacular that's happening over in Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. Something that I've been wanting since day one of that land opening is, of course, we can see the fireworks from Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, and they have a show called Fire of the Rising Moons. And basically, they use the amazing John Williams Star Wars music, and they mix the music so that it fits whatever fireworks we're seeing for the night in Disneyland Park. And what's crazy about that is, as I just mentioned, the shows change a ton. So this Fire of the Rising Moons show premiered in April of 2024, just a little over a year ago, during Season of the Force. And since then, it's been used. They've had different variations for Together Forever, Mickey's Mixed Magic, Believe in Holiday Magic, Halloween Screams, and Wondrous Journeys. It's really remarkable to think I mean, that must be like working backwards. The show already exists, and they have to take what exists, what you created for Wondrous Journeys, and be like, okay, now how do we fit some Star Wars music into this? And that's just mind blowing to me that even exists. And I'm so happy that it does.
Yeah, and you're right, Jeff. It is reverse engineering the process, and we usually don't start with fireworks as the baseline, but of course, in a lot of ways, was I would say probably a gift for the composer and musicians to create a track very much how you score a film, right? That this is your film, and we gave them all of the fireworks of when they go off in time and say score this, and I'm sure they had an amazing time with that. So I think it's a very smart way of incorporating this element into our existing nighttime shows. And you're right, it's actually incredible, and I love watching the shows from that location.
I'm sure that they love it, but I'm sure that they also think to themselves, why are there 5 different shows or 5 shows plus happening in the course of 1 year? I mean, it's a lot of changes. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, it is.
Before we go here, I'd just love to get your final thoughts on, what do you think of Wondrous Journeys returning for Disneyland's 70th anniversary, especially since it was created for the Walt Disney Company's 100th anniversary? Do you feel like, you look at the show in a different way because of the new celebration that's happening, or are you just happy to have it back in the park? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, I am excited to have this show come back to Disneyland, and I'm sure just like many of our guests are. And I think because it's coming back for the 70th, I don't think the message changes for our guests, even though we're going into the 70th, right? Wondrous Journeys is that message of celebrating wonder and inspiring our guests to wonder, and what that can lead to is truly, I think, at the heart of the message. And the 100th anniversary was something that just inspired us to create this show. Even though it was for that specific anniversary, this show will live on, and is, I think, going to continue to wow our guests no matter what celebration it's for.
Fantastic. I would agree. I highly recommend you check it out. I have a mission for myself. I want to see it in some of the other locations because I'm a Main Street guy. I love seeing it in front of the castle, but I'm not the type to wait for hours. So I only see it right directly in front of the castle if it's a media thing or a special circumstance. So typically I'm a Main Street guy, but I want to check this out in some of the other locations because it's a special thing. It's a special thing that's part of that park. And thanks for all of your work on it and all of the shows you've done through the years.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. Thank you. It's been a pleasure chatting with you.
Now it's time to bring in Meredith from Mini Memories Travel for another Disney vacation tip. But before we get to that tip, let's talk a bit about some news. How you doing, Meredith?
I'm great, Jeff. How are you?
I'm good as well. Have you heard the news? Because we got some big news. The Walt Disney Company has announced a brand new theme park resort coming to Abu Dhabi, United Arab Emirates, created in partnership with Moral, the operators of Yas Island. This new resort will be fully developed, built, and operated by Moral, with Disney Imagineers providing creative design and operational oversight. So this is the same deal that they have with Tokyo Disney Resort. I feel like cast members know this better than anybody because with Tokyo Disney Resort, it's like the one resort they can't get into for free because Disney doesn't own it and operate it. So same deal. Business-wise, makes a lot of sense, but there's a little bit of controversy behind it, which we'll get into. This will be the 7th Disney theme park resort, and it came out of left field. Like, I haven't heard any inklings of this, and I've even talked to people at Imagineering that were like, yeah, this was shocking. Had you heard anything?
Well, the weird thing is I was at a conference before the announcement, and everyone was talking about having just been to Abu Dhabi from Disney, of my business development team. Though they did not say that, but afterwards I got home and went, oh, that's why they were in Abu Dhabi.
That makes sense. All right. Well, my first thought was, wow, Disney has successfully found a location more humid and less tolerant toward gay people than Florida. Good work. That was my first thought. And I know a lot of people have kind of responded not in the, not thrilled about it. Of course, listen, it's an area that's known as being like intolerant. But at the same time, there are a ton of theme park things. There's a Warner Brothers World there, and SeaWorld is there. So it fits the landscape, but I'm not sure it fits the Disney demographic as far as guests. But at the same time, I don't think it's going to stop people from going, especially if they're one of those people that have like gone to every park around the world. I don't think that people are going to draw the line at, well, these people are intolerant, so we're not going to a Disney park. Like, the Disney addicts are Disney addicts.
Right. And they'll find a reason that it's okay for them to be there. I agree with all that, having pretty strong feelings about that, and family with very strong feelings. It's not on my list to jump into because of that. It's just an area that I don't feel very thrilled going. But do I book trips there? Yes. Do a lot of people go there? Usually tied to business that I book. Do I see them bringing their families? No.
Yeah,
Do you?
that's the big question for me is like safety. What I feel, I would have to do a ton of research because all I know is a blanket statement of it's not safe, they're intolerant, and that's obviously not good. That doesn't make me feel safe or happy. So if I were even consider, I would put it to you this way. It would be, I've only been to the domestic parks in Paris. So it would be the last of the 7 if I were ever to go. And I would do a lot of research beforehand. So Disney did respond to this. They responded to these potential concerns, saying basically that Disney is a global company with operations all over the world, and they're, quote, always respectful of the countries and cultures where we do business, while always adhering to our own standards and values. Okay. It's a pretty lawyery statement. Here's the thing. If Disney were building and investing there themselves, I'd be like, what the hell are you doing? Disney chases the dollar. We all know this. Right. This is not a secret. And this is an easy peasy deal for them. It's basically, I think it works like a licensing deal. Like this other company's putting all the money into it. And yeah, they're getting Disney resources, but it's not the financial risk like building a Shanghai Disneyland or something like that. So I get it. I also get the concerns. I think a lot of people will complain about it, but I think it's the same thing as when Disney Plus raises their prices and everybody complains about that and then they don't cancel. I think it's Disney. I think there are Disney addicts, and I think it'll probably do well if it happens. I think at one point Universal was trying to develop there, and I think it was announced, and I think they canceled. So,
yes,
we'll see if this happens.
I agree with you in all of that. I agree that the licensing by doing it not themselves is a game changer in that they're not as invested. They can take the chance. They can do it. A lot of people go to Abu Dhabi. Why wouldn't you say, all right, if you're there, let's put something fun? I kind of see that side. I don't think it's going to turn it into a destination except for those true Disney fanatics, right? That are going to say, I now have to go.
Yeah, I did talk to some people I know who, immediately I was like, oh, this is dangerous. This sounds like not a great idea. And their response, and I wish I was this optimistic. They're like, well, maybe Disney will change the culture and maybe it will become a more tolerant place. And I was like, that's giving Disney more power than I think they have. But I like the idea of that. That's lovely. If like within 5 years of opening, all of a sudden it's a more tolerant place. But, I don't know. Who knows? We shall see, I guess.
I think we both have the same fears and both have the same, I don't really want to put my stamp on it's safe.
Yeah.
I will, like everything, I'm the queen of too much information, which I think you already gotten from me. I want to give you all the details. So I can't imagine what my playbook is going to look like for booking this park when it comes to fruition. It will have a lot of, okay, you have to know these are the cultural norms. These are the things to be careful of. And it's going to take a lot.
I'm curious to see because I did, when I did a Disney cruise, we stopped in the Bahamas. Is it Nassau? Is that where you can get off?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And so I always remember, and I was like a kid, like a teenager at the time, and it was different, right? Like the cruise ship is the Disney bubble, and then you get off and there's the reality of like what this place is like, and it wasn't the most safe. You're like kind of immediately, there were people asking for money and stuff like immediately when you get off the ship.
In that particular port, I call it walking the plank. You literally have to walk through 8 million vendors and come and do this and come and do that. Absolutely what you're describing. It is completely from your little bubble to, okay, when I got off with my kids when they were younger and my niece and nephew, I'm like, guys, can you surround Brianna and walk her off here?
Yeah.
But it's a different feeling.
Yeah, I hear a lot of people describe it as an unsafe thing. So I'm kind of curious if Disney's going to successfully create a bubble here, maybe, where like if you don't leave the Disney bubble, like a cruise ship, you'll be fine. But the minute you cross that border, it's a different world. I don't know. We'll see. The one thing I am questioning, and they haven't said anything about this, so I doubt it, but I know some of the theme parks there are like fully indoors because from what I understand, the heat is like unbearable. And as we all know, it's only getting worse. So I'm curious if there's a potential of either the whole thing being indoors and or just, the great majority of the attractions. Like maybe there won't be a big Thunder Mountain Railroad because they're going to avoid outdoor attractions. I don't know. And frankly, nobody knows. This is very early stages. The concept art is very, very minimal. And it was just a shocking announcement in a shocking location, and honestly kind of a weird response to, like I said, this is completely separate because they're not paying for it, but I was just like, another resort? Can we get another theme park in Florida, please? Epic Universe is opening, please. Can we get another theme park? So that was just my response, but it was shocking.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely shocking and absolutely, interesting. It gives us something to talk about in terms of something different with Disney. They're keeping themselves in the news at the very least, which is they're good at, and no press is bad press, right?
Yeah. We'll see what happens. In any case, we're going to talk about Muppet Vision 3D again. I apologize. I feel like every conversation we've had is Muppet Vision. But did you happen to hear about this invite that some cast members got?
No, tell me.
So cast members got an email and it said, "We invite you to be part of an audience of Walt Disney World cast members as we capture the energy, emotion, and magic of Muppet Vision 3D. As we prepare to say goodbye to this special show, this cast member exclusive event will give participants the opportunity to experience the show as we preserve and celebrate the legacy that is Muppet Vision 3D. So they're doing some sort of recording for preservation. They haven't said what it's for, but I'm happy this is happening. From what I understand, it's happening at like 3 a.m. or some wild hour.
Usually, yeah. I've been invited to a few of those things, and it is my husband going, "You're getting up at 3 a.m. to go into the park?" And I'm like, "Well, yes, I am." And I have my little ears that glow, and I'm in.
So yeah, this is happening, and they kind of announced when they announced the closure of Muppet Vision 3D, there were some sort of future plans. They're recording it, which immediately I think makes people think, oh, it's going to be on Disney Plus. We'll see. I don't know what's going to happen with this, but I'm glad something's happening. I think every attraction, no matter how popular or even easily forgotten an attraction is, I think in this day and age where we can so easily document things, they should all be documented, So I'm happy.
I agree with you. Because wouldn't you love to go back? Like there's certain ones, like my first time at Disney with the 2000 Leagues Under the Sea. I would love to know what that really looks like as an adult.
And just things like Adventure Through Inner Space, I never experienced at Disneyland. Okay. And so, yeah, definitely I'm all for archival purposes and, just keeping it alive in some way, shape, or form. But another super nerdy thing I got excited about, this just happened the day we're recording, like this morning. We got a video released getting ready for Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party. And I got to tell you, for years, I love the Disney costumes, the Disney wardrobe, the Mickeys, every character. They're great. But there's always been one character that's driven me crazy, and it's Jack Skellington. Because he looks like a Party City kind of costume. Have you seen Jack Skellington where, like, the mouth of the actor is revealed so that he can be a talking character. It's basically like the Jack Skellington head, but like you see the mouth and you can easily see where it separates, where the mask ends and the face begins. Have you ever seen this?
I have not. No, I just actually Googled it, and no, it's horrifying.
Yeah, it's just not up to Disney standards, in my opinion. I think we're so used to, believable characters, and this it just always reminded me of like Party City. We can see the seams. It's just not convincing. The exciting thing is we got a video today about Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party, and it has Jack and Sally in it, and Sally looks the way she always has as character, but Jack now has a full head, basically a ginormous version of what they used to make the film, the little puppets, like a human-sized version of that. Whether or not it talks and stuff yet, we don't know. Whether or not this is even what's going to be at the party, we don't know. This was just kind of a teaser announcement video of get ready for Mickey's Not So Scary. Whether or not this is just Walt Disney World and not Disneyland, we don't know. We don't know. But
we hope.
What we do know is this is a new version of the costume we've never seen before. It's been used in an official marketing piece for Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party. The guess, and good assumption, educated guess here, is that this is what we're going to see when we see a Jack Skellington meet and greet or in a parade now, and it's far superior. So I'm so happy because literally every year I would see him, I would just be like, this is a crap costume.
Yeah, no, I totally, either I have seen it and completely blocked it out of my mind, but until I saw it again, no. Yeah. And I am the girl who might be able to completely block it out of my mind, going, that's not Jack to me. It happened.
So that happened. And then once again, it's just some weird news. We have another Epcot fire to discuss. Not too long ago, there was a fire in Epcot during, was it Food and Wine, I think? But just like recently, one of the popcorn carts caught on fire. So what's going on? Yeah, what's going on at Epcot? This is weird. Too many fires in the Disney parks.
I completely agree. And I had clients right near where the popcorn, it happened to be that they had just told me they were riding Remy. And I'm like, are you being evacuated? They're like, yes, but not, but sort of. And so I was kind of getting play by play on that one. But it literally just was a cart that caught on fire that made a big deal that wasn't as huge. Now, Epcot, have you done any backstage stuff at Epcot?
Yeah.
So you have been back there when the water comes on for the fireworks?
When the water, do you mean the sprinklers on the rooftops?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so depending how the wind goes, it's more or less on how wet you get back there when you're walking out. So they're ready for it, right?
But yeah, we don't want things catching on fire. Listen, accidents happen, but like this is like twice in the last couple months. That's just a little too often and just bizarre. I don't know what's going on at Epcot. In any case, listen, let's talk about some Disney experiences we've had because, Meredith, I know you've had a pretty wonderful Disney cruise experience. Let's hear a little bit about it.
I did, and I did this one as an adult. Like, I wanted to Disney adult and see, I always get the questions with my multi-gen, well, what's there for the adults? What's there for the grandparents? And since I was going with just my husband, we really Disney adulted on it.
Just to clarify, was this like truly just a vacation for you? And I get it, like your mind's always kind of on the clock when you're doing stuff like this. I understand. But like, was there any aspect of like, was this comped by the company? Was there work involved in some way? Or was this a vacation?
So what they call these are seminars at sea. And okay, so there are two things. They call them familiarizations and seminars at sea. This was a bit of a mashup in a FAM can be a true FAM, meaning go experience the product. We're going to give you a discount. Everything I do, not everything, 90% of what I do, I have to put something into. Like I have to have something in the game. I have to pay some amount of it. It's never truly comped. And this one, they did have our business development team on there and we ate meals together. We ate one meal a day together. But the rest of it was to experience the product as a guest.
Okay.
I didn't have to wear a name tag where sometimes I have to wear my name tag and all of that. There was none of that. But there was what did you do and what did you get out of it aspect kind to it. But I got to spend most of my days just as a regular guest would spend their time.
All right. What were some of the highlights?
So it was really neat. It was really fun to go in, and my husband's never been on one. So then just the simple announcement of the Wallace party entering and him being like, okay, that would be really cool with little kids. He's like, I liked it as an adult, but really cool. And have the characters waiting. Seeing all the characters without trying to ever worry about getting in a line or doing any of that. It was really sweet to see how Disney has really upped the game and made that so easy for to flow through and meet all the princesses right in the grand entry to the, in the rotunda of the ship. It was really magical.
Remind me which ship you were on.
We were on the Dream.
Okay.
The other aspects that are just fun is, so we sat at a table at dinner with all adults again. And so the waiters came over and I'm like, it was a table filled with mostly people who had never sailed. And I'm like, can you show what you would do for the kids? Show us the puzzles they're known for having something at every meal that keeps everyone involved and gets kids talking and it was fun watching some of the adults not be able to think outside the box and do it and all. But to get back to my theme of adulting, Disney adulting, we ate dinner every single night at either Remy or Paolo after the group dinner. So we would go to the group dinner and exchange ideas and do all of that. And then we'd go up to Remy and Paolo. And I learned things, Jeff. There are charges to these meals and I had never questioned it. That was the charge. Well, we ate at Paolo every night pretty much. And they're like, no, you don't have to do that set menu and that. You can order the one thing you want and pay for that one thing, which I thought meant that for me was a huge light bulb moment because you don't need all that food. You don't.
I was going to say, we're going back to Lord of the Rings here. This is your second supper now.
Exactly. We didn't eat that the first supper. The first supper we were good. If we did a salad. But yes, we were definitely having our first and second dinners. But it was that was a great tip to be able to pass along to people is you can go to these adult only venues. And yes, they say you're going to pay a surcharge. Yes, you do pay that surcharge, but you're in control of that surcharge with the menu, not at Remy. Remy is set and unreal over the top perfection. But that was a cute takeaway. And just that we could travel through the spaces and see kids and interact. I mean, we love kids. Yeah, kind of like kids and interact and stuff. But then we could just slip away and be in the champagne bar and watching Dumbo appear and disappear on bubbles throughout the room. And it was a really neat takeaway of we had a relaxing, enjoyable, pretty much adult only cruise. Did we meet characters? Yes, I had to get one picture with the character. Yes, did we go up to the pool and see the thing? And of course, I'm going to do the silly slides and get pictures and all that. But we did it much more as an adult. And we also did the 5K on the island, which is just a great way to say, hey, you get a little souvenir, go walk, see the island. It was really exciting.
Let me ask you this, with this whole Disney adulting theme in place, I know there are a lot of adults I know who love cruises, and they'll always say, I don't like kids. I don't want kids around on my vacation. And granted, you're going on a Disney cruise, there are going to be kids. But did you happen to find that there were like a good amount of areas that truly were adult only? Like what I guess I'm asking is, would you advise an adult who really doesn't want a kid vacation, like, hey, no, you can make a Disney cruise work for you? Or is it really like, nah, you're going to have at least, 20% of your day is going to have kids around you or something? Or is there a way to really kind of bubble yourself into the adult stuff?
You could really bubble, like to the point of kind of forgetting that you're on a Disney cruise and then all of a sudden wander out and be like, oh, wow, look, characters. Oh, wow, look. It's just how you move. The spa area, the adult only pool. Adult only pool is very, very, very crowded. So that's my negative in that. But is it fun to be social? I liked it. We would go there. Did we spend a lot of time there? No. Would I strongly recommend if you're doing the Disney adulting, you get a room with a balcony? Yes, because that's where we spent a lot of our quiet time. We also, again, have someone help you. Go up to Remy and Paolo deck and then walk through the bar. Used to be their cigar bar. They've now toned that down away, and it's just another lovely bar and 2 outdoor areas. We sat out there and read books, and there are no kids allowed there. And that's not labeled an adult only area, except you have to get up to where the adult only restaurant, so no one's bringing their kids there.
You know what I would recommend for Disney? So if you ever talk to the folks there, and maybe they do this, but I don't think they do. Obviously, the assigned dinners that happen throughout the night, obviously there are going to be kids and families at those, but I think it would be smart if they made the last one adults only. I bet you there would be enough interest if like Disney really started looking at, hey, how can we make more money off these cruises, even though they make a ton and they do very well. I wouldn't be surprised if they started marketing toward adults like, hey, you can have your own adult bubble here on our cruise ships. Right now, that's the place where, in my mind, I'm like, it's unavoidable unless you want to do an upcharge for the other restaurants.
Correct.
But if they had like the regular dining and just like the last setting was adults only, I don't know. That's something that could be potentially worthwhile for them, but I don't know.
It absolutely could. They'd have to figure out the space because of how they do the rotating dinners. So we did have this one meal where no matter who I was with, if I was with my young children or whatever, this one child just screamed. And you can't do anything about bad parenting. You can't avoid that. Someone did finally go over, a cast member, and say, would you like to take your child out? So you're right. You just
what a novel idea.
It was unbelievable. I like kids. I'm like, okay, they cry. But this was literally like 10 minutes of screaming during the meal. And you're like, at what point do you get a clue? There it is. And she was with a big group, and you're like, someone in there has got to be going, go ahead, just go.
Well, listen, aside from the screaming kid, I'm happy to hear you had a really, really nice cruise. I know you were looking super forward to it. You definitely had a better Disney experience than me because I went to Star Wars night at Disneyland, which was part of Disneyland After Dark. And listen, now, I've talked about Disneyland After Dark events on this show. In fact, I've said many times one of my favorite memories ever at Disneyland was 90s night when they did that. So Disneyland After Dark creates really high quality events, but this Star Wars night this year, it's the first Star Wars night I've been to. I have nothing to compare it to, but holy moly, was it like really disappointing and just kind of really lame. And it felt like budget-friendly version of Star Wars night or something. It was bizarrely mediocre, and I went for free, so I can't complain. But like if I had paid for it, it's like $165 or something like that. The only reason to have gone is if you're someone who just wanted to get on rides quickly because there was like no wait for rides.
Right.
The park was dead. And I have a theory with this. I think part of the problem with a Star Wars night is that Disneyland is so full of Star Wars all the time, every day, that it's just, even though they have some unique character experiences, it's just not unique enough. Like there was no fireworks show for Star Wars night. There wasn't even a cavalcade. What they did instead was they marched guests down the street who came in. So basically, Mickey and Minnie were in their kind of Star Wars wardrobe. I think they were in their Star Wars wardrobe, and they were in one of the vehicles going down Main Street, and then like all guests in costume could follow them. So basically, the paying guests became the cavalcade. And I was like, this feels
crazy.
It just felt so cheap. And it was interesting because in that same week, I went to the first ever Universal Fan Fests event at Universal Studios Hollywood, which was like incredible and half the price. And so some healthy competition happening. I think it's good. Universal certainly has some stuff to learn, but like overall knocked it out of the park for a first year. And then, this Disneyland After Dark event that's been going on for years, it just felt really lame compared to any others I'd gone to. So a bit of a shame on them scenario because they charge a lot and the reviews across the board have not been very good.
I have had an experience at Disney World like that with an After Dark experiences, having gone to some amazing ones and then having one that was just, it worked because of who I was with. They wanted to ride the ride. Same exact thing as you. But so I wrote a review, and the next year, and granted, my reviews go right to my business development manager, got a response, said, we're working on it, called me back and asked questions. And then they did. It was a much better event this year. So hopefully they'll do the same for you.
Yeah, it just felt like they were resting on their laurels kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, nope, sorry, that's not satisfactory. Not when you keep charging more. And now, especially not when you have your competition doing another hard ticket after hours event and it's exponentially better. So, healthy competition, like I said. I would not pay for another Star Wars night. I'll say that. And like I said, I do think innately the problem with a Star Wars night at Disneyland is there's just too much Star Wars in the park to begin with. And I get it. It's a big fandom. And I think you could do something incredible, but I don't think Disneyland After Dark is willing to spend the money that you need to make it as incredible as it should be. So move on with some other themes is what I would say. In any case, with that, Meredith, what is this month's Disney travel tip?
This one is an easy one. It is, everyone's always asking about discounts and ways to save a little money on Disney. And Disney's great about when they have extra inventory coming out with some discounts, which your travel agent can go back in and apply. Hopefully it's me. They make that easy. But then there's just the simple, you have seen those Disney gift cards in stores, haven't you, Jeff?
Absolutely.
Well, you can get those at places like Costco, Sam's, BJ's, and Target that have different levels that you can get off. Just in Target, use your Target credit card if you have one, and you get 5% off those gift cards. That adds up. That's 5% off. And you can then, they have sites where you can combine the cards. I have a limit. Like if someone comes to me and says, I'm paying by Disney gift card, I will send them the link and say, excellent. I'm really excited for you. Can you please consolidate them into one card? And they do that. And then I can pay that way. I'll do like 5 or 6 for someone. I'm not going to do some. I've had clients come in. I have $120 ones that are excellent. Combine them.
Yeah, they're easy to combine. There's a whole website dedicated to that. So folks might not know that. If you have multiple Disney gift cards, go to the website on the back of the gift card and you can consolidate them into one. But what you're saying, I just did when I went to Walt Disney World. It's one of those things that I do have a Target credit card, and I was actually dumbfounded the day I realized, this blanket statement is 5% off nearly everything. There's always exceptions, usually alcohol and usually gift cards, but Target will honor 5% off. So if you're going to Walt Disney World and you're spending, let's just say $100 to make it easy, you pay $100 gift card, you pay $95 with your Target credit card, and you're saving $5 right there. So do that for $500. That's $25. That's, a meal while you're there or a souvenir or something. If you know you're going to spend it at Walt Disney World, it's worth it. Granted, if you pay off the credit card, the next month. So, but yeah, it's a great tip. I definitely have taken advantage of that myself.
Most people with families who are going to Disney have one of those things, have a Sam's, a BJ's, a Target, or whatever. So it's a great little way to save something, have a little something more.
Excellent. Well, folks, you can get Meredith's top 10 tips for visiting Walt Disney World simply by contacting her and asking for the Dizney Coast to Coast bonus document with no obligations whatsoever. You can find Meredith's contact info using the Mini Memories travel link in this episode's description. And don't forget, Meredith can help you plan any vacation you'd like at zero cost to you. Meredith, thank you so much for being here. I'm so happy you enjoyed your cruise, and I'll talk to you again next month.
Thank you, Jeff. Have a great month.
Now, folks, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'll be back next month with another. If you're looking for more before then, be sure to check out the DCTC catalog featuring hundreds of different episodes with a wide array of topics and conversations. One thing I'd like to note about Wondrous Journeys is that although the Nighttime Spectacular featured moments from all animated features at the time of its creation in 2023, it sort of still has a moment from each film, as the only animated feature added to the roster since is Moana 2. Although it might not have a specific moment from that movie, the film's characters are certainly featured in scenes from the original Moana. Now, whether you're in the car, cooking dinner, planning a Disney trip, or enjoying a shower, Disney Coast to Coast has episodes available for you to enjoy 24/7 in your favorite podcast app. DCTC Patreon members can join me and Kyle Burbank from laughingplace.com later this month during our Disney Catch-Up Zoom session. Join by clicking the Patreon link in this episode's description. This episode has been executive produced by Jeffrey Riccio. Gain rewards like Jeffrey, including access to never-before-heard episodes and more, by becoming a Patreon member yourself. And thanks to Cap and Haddock for leaving a 5-star rating and review saying, "This podcast is awesome. Great interviews, great guests, great host. check it out. Leave a review wherever you listen to the podcast, and you may just hear it read on a future episode. Until next time, anything you need can be found in this episode's description. From the DCTC hotline, where you can leave a voicemail and be heard on a future episode, contact info to reach me, some free gifts from me to you, and so much more. So be sure to check out this episode's description. Other than that, folks, have a magical day. Bye!